Hey everyone, back again, back in the office. I got back from vacation about a week ago and have been very busy despite being on vacation for 2 weeks and getting back about 2 weeks ago. I want to take some time today briefly to talk about the importance of resetting and hitting the proverbial reset button for ourselves in our lives as productive, busy adults and things like that. It's actually a neurological necessity in terms of psychological, neurological, emotional, for some spiritual health. And so when we take that reset for ourselves, that allows our nervous system. When I say reset, I mean that's kind of where I'm coming from with it. Is that from that sympathetic nervous system standpoint. And a way to think about the sympathetic nervous system is that's the what we call the fight or flight response or the freeze response, fight, flight, or freeze. That's the nervous system that we're talking about is that sympathetic nervous system. And we also have a parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest part of our nervous system. And ideally, that is where we want to be most of the time, is in that parasympathetic mode and doing that on a being there most of the time. A way to think about it is think of yourself holistically as a vehicle, and ideally, let's put it in that context. Hopefully, most of the time, when we get into our car or vehicle, whether it be a motorcycle, a car, a truck, but if we're going from point A to point B in our vehicle, we want to basically be chill and relaxed, and get be able to get to point B unscathed and just chilling and have a good time, listen to some tunes, whatever it is, right? And also, we know this neurologically as well, is that when we're more relaxed in anything that we do, whether it's driving a car, performing any kind of task, especially complex tasks, the more relaxed we are, and the more our parasympathetic nervous system is in the driver's seat, the better we perform, the better we operate. So if you think of your parasympathetic nervous system is as being in the driver's seat, then the sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight response, should be riding shotgun, riding in the back seat, or hell, I mean, even in the trunk. Somewhere, it should be somewhere in the vehicle, but it should not be in the driver's seat most of the time. However, if we're driving along, we're chill, our parasympathetic nervous system is in the driver's seat, things are going fine, and then all of a sudden, we see an old lady coming out into the middle of the road or what have you. Um, we need to take some action. I mean, hopefully, nobody out there would just want to run her down. So that's when our sympathetic nervous system should drag our parasympathetic out of that driver's seat and take the wheel and take necessary action to act to avoid that accident from happening. But like I said, ideally, hopefully, we're not having all of these old ladies running out in front of us all the time. So the same is true for our daily life and our lives in general and holistically. And then so hitting that reset button helps to calibrate those two parts of our nervous system. And when I say reset, it doesn't have to happen in the same way for everybody. Everybody's got ideally should have their own way of going about that to calibrate their nervous system, because although the anatomy is the same, our body chemistry is very unique. And so, what can help to calibrate that part of ourselves may very well be different from one person to the next. But that's my point here: is finding what that is for you, finding what works for you, and putting that into practice. Now for me, and also this I will say, uh, for just about everybody, in some way or in some way, shape, or form, individuals should find daily a way to do this, uh, in whatever way. Obviously, they're not going to be hugely extravagant sort of ways if we're doing a daily reset. But whether it's in the morning, whether it's at night, whether it's in the middle of the day, it doesn't really matter. But that's really ideal and healthy for a person to do that reset at least once a day, two, three times a day, and it wouldn't have to take long, just a few minutes, or so, maybe an hour. But in the bigger scope of things, I'll just share this with you real quick. The way that I tend to do it and why I tend to do it this way, and let me preface what I'm about to say, is that I'm not telling people to do it my way. This is just one of those things that works best for me. So I usually like to do my reset, my bigger sort of reset, somewhere in the middle of the year, June, July, August. Because it's the midpoint of the year, and that I'll illustrate the importance of that for me in a second. But also because it's the summertime, and I love the summer. I love hot weather. Anyone that knows me knows I love hot weather. I love to sweat. I love summertime activities. I like being in the water. I like being, all of that kind of stuff. So the activities that I really enjoy are outdoors, and it's in the heat in the summertime types of activities. So that's why I really allocate that, and I take 2 weeks, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but somewhere around those 14 days. And the first maybe 72 hours of those 2 weeks is just like basically a total decompression of the previous 6 or 7 or so months of just like being in a different environment. And when I do these 2 weeks, I go somewhere. I go somewhere different or whatever. And so that is just those first couple of days that it's just, oh wow, my nervous system is like, oh, this isn't familiar. This is let's readjust just to this different environment or whatever, different atmosphere. And then for the rest of that first week is more of like an inventory or a contemplation of what I've done in the past year, for that year, of like what I've done so far, and like, okay, here's what I've done right, here's what I've done wrong. It's like an assessment of uh, what I need to continue to do more of or do less of, and that kind of thing. And also, I do get contemplative in the sense of just this is going to sound dramatic and stuff, but kind of examining my life or re-examining my life and seeing where things have gone right or wrong in that same context, but in the broader, more distant scope of things, and how I can learn. And then the remaining week, the second part of that week or so, of those 2 weeks, is um, planning and starting to initiate or enacting strategic initiatives for the next part of the year, the next 6 or so months, 7 months, whatever, of based on the reflection that I've done. And here's what I need to initiate. Here's what I need to do more of or less of, and kind of putting more of the practical strategic initiatives into effect, or how I will put them into effect. And not only looking at the next fiscal quarter or what have you, but also the next quarter of a century. I just like I talked about in the reflective part of that reset, but also the broader scope of the long game, you know, of when I might be 75 or so years old. I'm just about 50 years old now as of this recording. So I've done that for the past several years. That's what works for me on the in terms of like a more of a broader reset, and generally it helps to keep my nervous system calibrated and in good working order. to tackle the daily responsibilities and things of work and professional and personal responsibilities. So that's not what everyone else has to do, but yeah, I think it's important that people find that reset and what works for them and why that's so important. And then in terms of the daily day to day stuff, I think that's in a way even more important because we're living in the day to day. So for me, it's meditation, it's breath work, um, reading, and educating myself and taking and making that time to do that. And for me, it could be 5 minutes depending on the day, but it's a very mindful, focused, intentional 5 minutes, or somewhere up to an hour of that strictly for myself. So find what works best for you and start putting those things into practice, and you'll find your life will definitely improve. Thanks, everyone.